is intended to supplement the readings you're going to do pertaining to literature and the use of literature in research. So first of all, I just wanted to clarify what I mean by the term literature and how that's distinct from theory, which the prior presentation discussed. So literature is more of a generic, all-encompassing term, so theory fits within the larger umbrella of literature. So it's basically the idea literature encompasses everything we know about a topic most broadly. And then theory is more specific and refers to literature that speaks directly to the how and why of relationships between constructs. And there are two ways that literature reviews are used in higher education scholarship. So first of all, standalone literature reviews. Maybe you've done some for other classes, like, choose a topic and review the literature on it. So for instance, faculty-student interactions. Or also, literature is also part of research studies. So as you'll notice in many articles, journal articles you read, there'll be a section that discusses prior literature on a topic before discussing the actual study that's conducted and published in that article. So, and the bullet point under there, the purpose of the literature review assignment for this course, so that's going to be part of your action research proposal you'll be turning in at the end of this course is going to be a brief review of the literature that pertains to your topic. And so that's mainly what I'm going to focus on in this presentation. Okay, so I did want to note, though, if you're interested in seeing some examples of standalone literature reviews, I put a number of examples in the supplemental section on Blackboard of lit reviews that were published in the Teachers College Record about college effects and the importance of higher education. Really nice examples. And standalone literature reviews can answer a variety of questions around any topic. And it's kind of up to you as a writer, as an author, to decide the angle or the lens you want to take with your standalone literature review. So I'm not going to really talk about standalone lit reviews beyond just that, but I'm happy to talk about them in class if you would like. So in terms of doing a literature review as part of a research study, which is what we really are going to focus on in this class in terms of also framing your work in your action research project. In general, the idea of a lit review in a research study, which usually is, if you check out some journal article studies, usually it's maybe, a page and a half, 2 pages, single space, not super long, but really the point is to create a basis for the study that you're going to do and show that you understand how your work fits into the larger body of scientific inquiry, okay? Okay, so when you go to actually write or conduct a literature review, you should already have your topic in mind, right? So hopefully at this point in time or shortly, you will have an idea of what you'd like to do your action research proposal on for this course and or do your applied project on. So the first thing to do after you have your topic in mind is to search for sources. So the first chapter that I'm having you read for this week discusses some specific tips. But one thing I want to highlight is that it's important to be discerning when you're doing an academic literature review. You mostly want to draw from things that have been published in a scholarly journal rather than in the popular press. So there's a chart that talks about what a scholarly journal is, how that differs from popular publication and sort of sensational media, what have you, in the book chapter. And so I want to make sure everybody's clear on that. So if after this presentation and after you read, you don't really still understand how a scholarly source is different from any other source, let me know. But really, just to highlight the main differences in terms of, in a journal article, you'll note that all references are cited, right, in APA. So we have parenthetical references in the text, and then there'll be extensive bibliographies or footnotes. But in the popular press, like, Newsweek or the New York Times, you'll see they might refer to reports, but they don't have a formal list of references, and they don't really document their sourcing the way that academic research does, or academic publications do. Another thing is in terms of the editorial process, so academic journals are peer-reviewed or refereed, and that essentially means that there's a board of experts, scholarly experts, who review each publication and decide whether or not it meets their standards as experts to be published. And oftentimes this is a really long process. I'm happy to talk about it if you're interested in class. Ask me about it. But this oftentimes it takes 6 months to a year to even get an article published in an academic journal, which means, right, that it's not necessarily the most current knowledge. But in popular publication, oftentimes there will be an editor, but it's not necessarily an editor who comes from, the same academic background as what the topic is about. So it's a different editorial process. Certainly the language of scholarly journal publications differ from Newsweek and or other popular publications. Journals can often be really field-specific and include jargon that's pretty sophisticated. And in the popular press, oftentimes there's a mix of both simple and sophisticated, sort of like language styles. And then, of course, sort of the idea behind an academic journal is to really present research findings and expand knowledge in a discipline or field. And in contrast, while other popular publications are interested in informing the public about knowledge, it's more about informing people about current events and issues internationally, domestically, and locally. So there's certainly a difference, and you need to be keep in mind that in your literature review, when you're conducting a literature review for research purposes, you should mostly draw from scholarly journals and scholarly sources, okay? Sometimes you can certainly reference popular publications in terms of perhaps for a statistic or some sort of contemporary small piece of knowledge, but generally you should be drawing from scholarly sources. Okay, so how do you find those scholarly sources? Hopefully at this point in the program you are pretty familiar with academic databases that are available through the library. I have put links to a number of them up on Blackboard. The main one for education is called ERIC. It's education something, I don't remember what the acronym stands for, I'm sorry. But this is essentially what the main search page looks like on ERIC. And it's a collection of journals is located within ERIC. And also there will be records for books, conference papers, what have you. And so the nice thing about the search page on ERIC is that you can select and check that you just want peer-reviewed journal articles only. And you can also limit your search to just journal articles, books, dissertations, what have you, in this document type search. And then you can also, ERIC has its education and education database for all levels of education, but you can select and specify just that you want post-secondary research. So that's nice. There's also, I think you can specify just for two-year colleges too, if you're interested in doing a search based on just what we know about community colleges. So this is what the main search engine looks like for the ERIC page. And again, the links to ERIC as well as a number of other databases including PsycInfo, what other ones did I put up there? Sports Discus, the main sociology search engine. All of those databases are up on Blackboard, linked to on Blackboard. And so for your annotated bibliography assignment, which is due in a few weeks, I'm going to have you search for some articles related to your topic, some scholarly peer-reviewed articles. And so I want you to be familiar with hopefully at least one of these databases and the process of locating and understanding how to find scholarly articles using these databases. So if this is something that you're not familiar with, I'm hoping that people by this point are already familiar with how to search for academic sources. But if you're not familiar with this, please, please, please ask me about it in class. Okay, so once you get into the scholarly database that you're going to search, like ERIC or whatever, you need to think up keywords to use to search for your articles. So it's an act really of balancing the broad topic that you're interested in with sort of more narrow concepts. And so this takes work. It takes practice and messing around, honestly. It's not going to be totally intuitive usually to start with. So what you really need to think about, and this is what the chapters that you're reading for this week discuss, you need to identify vocabulary words that are used around your topic. So let's say my research topic, I'm interested in faculty-student interactions between students of color and white faculty. So maybe I'll sit around and brainstorm. So what's related to the idea of white faculty from sort of the dominant racial group in society interacting with students of color. So maybe I'm interested in this idea of privilege and so sort of how that dynamic works. And then also in terms of in higher education, I'm interested in the idea of interaction, maybe also gets the idea of student engagement in the academic milieu of the university and student involvement, maybe also sort of how racial identity theory, what that says about cross-racial interactions. So brainstorming those related concepts. Then getting down to specific vocabulary words. Usually it's better to stay sort of simple in terms of using 1 or 2 word key terms. So I wouldn't search for faculty-student interactions involving students of color and white faculty. That's not going to produce results. You need to distill that into easy sort of basic terms. And so again, it's an art, not a science. And we're going to workshop through this in class for your own topics. But be thinking now, even now, about how you might go about searching for your on your topic in academic databases. And really, it does depend on using the correct search term. So for instance, I searched Eric using the term students of color in the database and limiting it to peer-reviewed articles, and I got 964 results. That's a lot to wade through. But when I limited it to students of color, racism, and faculty-student interaction, and white faculty, I only got 1 result. And so what you need to do is kind of do a balance. So students of color and faculty-student interactions produced about 50 or 60 results. And so that number of articles is reasonable to get through. But you need to, if you see 964 results, you need to think about ways to limit your search a little bit more specifically. And then, of course, if you get 1 result, you're probably searching in too narrow of keywords. So you need to expand out. So again, we'll be brainstorming through some ideas for you to do this for your own topics in class, but be thinking about search terms that you might be able to use to locate articles. Okay, so I just want to make a couple of supplemental comments on how to manage and organize your sources once you've started searching the literature and you've found good articles that you think will be useful. So for purposes of this course, you're not going to have that many, so it's really not going to seem like it's that big of a deal in terms of keeping them all organized. But trust me, I encountered this in my dissertation. When you start doing a real research project, it can get quickly overwhelming in terms of keeping track of all your sources. So it's good to have an organizational scheme created from the start. And so in terms of printing or not printing articles, I don't usually print them to start with. I download them, though, in Adobe PDF form to my hard drive and save them there. And then if I decide that they're really awesome and I would like a hard copy, then I'll print them. But I always download them, and I think it's a good idea to do typically, because then at least you haven't totally lost access to them. I don't use a bibliographic software, but I regret that I don't, because a lot of my friends use them, and it's apparently like a great way to keep your articles organized. ASU has a subscription to what's called RefWorks, and that's available for free through the libraries. And the nice thing about RefWorks as well as Zotero is that both of those softwares will create your citations in APA format automatically, so you don't have to type them out yourself. So that's really nice. And then also, right now, both of them are free. Actually, RefWorks, though, once you leave ASU, you have to purchase access. I think it's $100 a year. But Zotero is free, and the only thing is that it just works with Firefox, and you have to download software. So if you are actually thinking of actually conducting research studies, or if you're looking for a good way to organize your sources, these 2 software options are really nice. We'll talk more maybe in class about if anyone actually does use them and has had success with them, or maybe with another platform. I don't, as I said, I don't use either one, but I do regret that because I know a lot of my friends have found they're very efficient and really nice ways to organize your references. In terms of, one thing I want to note, at least, so once you start identifying articles and you have sort of this list of possible articles in front of you that might be able to inform your study. One thing to know is you don't want to read through them word for word right away. What you want to do is really just focus on the abstracts of any journal articles. And then if you have a book, look at the table of contents. Usually in a book, I'll just read the first and the last chapter. And then if I feel like I need to look up any specific content, I'll use the index. I usually don't read through entire books, though, unless it's really, really, really closely connected to my topic. Typically, the first chapter and the last chapter will include most of what you need to know, to be honest. Articles, just skim through them. So after the abstract, just skim through the articles, see if there's any like major conceptual frameworks illustrated. Oftentimes I'll just read the first sentence of every paragraph if I think from the abstract that the article might be useful, and then I'll read just the last section in full, the implications, the recommendation for future research. You need to try to develop an efficient way of reading, especially if you get to a larger scale research project like a dissertation or a big study for your work. So definitely be efficient about your reading. Don't feel like you have to read through every word. Of course, for classes, if you're assigned a reading for classes, you should read through every word. But when you're reading for the purposes of informing your research, really, it's important to develop an efficient reading strategy to get the main ideas, but not bog yourself down in detail. Okay, so I just want to supplement what is discussed in more detail in the chapters around how to manage and organize your sources in terms of taking notes. So what I do is I create a huge Word document for any study I'm going to be doing when I'm doing the literature review, and I have the sources in APA format, and then underneath each one I'll bullet out my summary of what is important from that article related to my topic. I use the quotation marks to indicate when I've pulled out direct quotes, but you need to come up with whatever labeling system will work for you, so you're very clear about what is direct quotes. Maybe use colors, maybe highlight, I don't know, whatever you think works for you. Tables, some people use tables, but you want to, I cannot overemphasize this, you want to avoid plagiarizing, even accidentally, because this is something that is not very easily forgiven in the academy in general. And so come up with a scheme where you're very clear as to what is direct quotes and what is in your words. Okay, so for this course, I'm going to have you do a similar exercise by constructing a small annotated bibliography, and that's basically the technical term for a list of citations, just as I said, listed in an APA order, and related to your research topic or whatever subject area you're interested in, that also includes a brief description or summary. And so specific to this assignment, I want you not only to summarize the author's conclusions, but then also give your reactions to the article in terms of both the strengths and weaknesses of the work, as well as how you see that source contributing to your topic. And so all I'm going to be asking for is an annotated bibliography of at least 5 peer-reviewed sources related to your topic. And so what my intention is to give you practice searching and reading and evaluating the higher education literature, as well as developing a knowledge base around your action research topic of interest. And get practice not just summarizing what are key points from studies, but then also evaluating those sources and understanding sort of the connection between prior research and then your topic of interest and your idea of interest. So I'll certainly answer questions about what an annotated bibliography is in terms of what I want from this assignment in class, and there's also a description of it up in the assignment section on Blackboard. But essentially an annotated bibliography is really just summarizing and then also analyzing research that's out there on your topic. Okay, so when you go to actually write your literature review, after you've searched academic databases, you found a good list of sources, you've read through them, skimmed through them, you've summarized and or paraphrased them, pulled out maybe some direct quotes. When you sit down to actually write your literature review, I'm going to give you some final tips on what's important to keep in mind. So first of all, certainly, I mean, a literature review is just like any other academic research paper. So your interpretation of the available sources must be backed up with evidence to show that what you're saying is valid. And so you need to cite in your text, even when you're paraphrasing and not using direct quotes, you need to cite in your text where you got that information from. Okay, so one thing, be selective about what you're reporting. This is something that I am very bad about. You don't want to report every single little detail. Really, you want to select only the most important points in each source and to highlight in your review. So the type of information you choose to mention should be related to whatever your research problem is, right? Whether it's thematic, methodological, chronological, whatever. Focus on what's relevant. Don't get caught up in details that aren't important. And I'm very much an example of someone who has issues with this. But you want to be focused and selective. It's really important that while a literature review presents others' ideas, your voice as the writer should remain front and center. So you should weave references to other sources in what you're writing, but really try to maintain your own voice by starting and ending a paragraph with your own ideas and wording, and also use quotes sparingly. So some short quotes are okay if you want to emphasize a point, or if what the author says just can't be rewritten in your own words. And sometimes you'll need to quote certain terms that were made up or coined by the author and aren't common knowledge or were taken directly from a study. But really don't use extensive quotes as a substitute to your own summary and interpretation of the literature. That's really important. A literature review should be in your words, not in everybody else's words. Okay, so you want to be explicit about how your review is organized and how you approach the literature. So the Teacher College Record standalone reviews that I put on Blackboard are really nice examples of that. So the authors say, all right, so in this literature review, we're going to discuss this and this and this and this content. We're focusing on literature that's been published within the last 10 years. And they do a really nice job of saying, okay, so this is how we approach the review and this is what we're bounding it to. In terms of summarizing and synthesizing, really important to not just report information, you should also critique your sources. And you need to really relate it, the significance of each study, to your own work. So this is something that's, again, an art, and it takes practice, but it's critical in a literature review to really frame your own work as opposed to just regurgitating others. And then finally, too, in a research study, something to know is that the literature should really be integrated throughout. So you'll return to the literature oftentimes in your discussion section. Pay attention to this as you're reading studies that are out there, that they return to the literature in their discussion section and connect what they've done back to what other people have found. So it's not just, okay, so the literature review section, I've summarized the literature, I've synthesized it, and that's it. No, usually because the idea of scientific inquiry is that it's a process where we build upon others' knowledge, you'll return to it in the end and say, hey, what I found in this study is supported by prior studies and or different from prior studies. So literature really is kind of part of the larger process of doing research. Okay, so in class, we're going to spend some time talking about lit reviews, and I want to give you all a chance to discuss your strategies that you use maybe for searching, organizing, and managing the literature. You'll read about some in the readings. I've talked a little bit about stuff here, but there's definitely a lot of ways to go about doing this, and I'd love to hear, and I think everyone would benefit from hearing how some of you have successfully used search strategies. We'll also spend time identifying in groups some keywords that you can use for your own topics and how to search for your specific project ideas. And then we'll also have some time to look at other research studies that are out there and see how lit reviews are used to frame and really support research studies. See some good examples. So that's what we'll be doing in class. Please, again, come prepared with any questions that you have or topics you want to talk about together as a group. Okay.